Welcome to the Market Mystics podcast, where we discuss what's happening in the cryptosphere and trading on Earth as it is in heaven. Buckle up and huddle on while we dive in and get weird. Here are your hosts, Joshua and Kim.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to Thursday with Josh and Kim, where you never know what you're going to get. Mondays, you're like, yeah, this is probably going to be something spiritual, maybe about finances, maybe not. Thursdays, you might get crypto, you might get like fiat money, you might get something totally random. Who knows?
Today might be totally random.
Today might be totally random.
We'll see.
We'll find out. All right. Well, before we dive too far into things, Kim, what's going on in the market?
Bitcoin and Ethereum are both down 1.1% over 24 hours. Their 7 days are a bit different though. Bitcoin is up about 2.5%. Ethereum's up about 6.5% over 7 days. Bitcoin's sitting at $17,053, which I was cheering for yesterday when I saw it get up over 17. And Ethereum sitting at $1,283. We have our biggest mover today. When I was looking through the charts, I noticed some names which were on the higher end of movers that I was kind of interested to see. I saw Luna Classic having a big move today. I saw Trust Wallet token, which I'd never heard of. I used Trust Wallet, but I didn't know they had a native token. It was moving a lot today, but the winner in the top 100 was a number 84 coin. It's Ethereum POW, which is ETHW. That's kind of the call symbol. It's up almost 18.5% over 24 hours and up just over 14.5% over 7 days, sitting at $3.96. I went to their website to get a little blurb. This is what I do. I go to the website to get like a blurb, learn about this token quickly. And they had an about us section, which is usually where you can get great information. For them, they had one sentence. It said, Ethereum Foundation is shifting to a proof of stake fork while we decided to stay with the proof of work Ethereum. That's it. It's simply the old way of Ethereum. Post the original fork. And
It's interesting when these, I think you can call them hard forks, like where it really shifts the blockchain from one thing to another, and you end up with these certain group of developers or people who say, "Oh, we don't want to change," and so you have Ethereum Classic, now you have ETHW, you have Bitcoin Cash, like it happens, and it's just a curious way of doing things. It's like denominations within the church.
That's true. That's true. You know what? I just speaking of this, a lot of people, I think this is a good reflection of humanity. A lot of people really don't like change. Or they're really willing to like do something new, but that's the last thing they're doing that's new. Like they're going to get in and they're going to get comfortable and they're not changing again.
Right.
And I think sometimes it's people who just simply believe this is the better way. But I think other times it's people going, I'm not changing this again.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely, I've had lots of conversations with people or just experiences in life where I've worked for employers who use outdated software that isn't supported, doesn't really work because that's the way they've always done it.
Windows XP?
I mean, maybe even before that. Yeah, I regularly had an employer who referenced keyboard shortcuts to Lotus 123, which was the predecessor to Windows Excel or Microsoft Excel.
Fantastic.
So he would make comments like, "Oh, this is how we did it then." It's like, wow, okay. Like, And I mean, he managed. Like, yeah, you can manage. I think um, you and I are both called a little bit more to innovation and uh, to change more than anything else.
That is a very true statement. I tend to be
Mm,
a person who, like, I will start something new. It will be great. I'm very excited about it. I get very passionate about it. Once it's mastered, I'm ready to move on.
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I enjoy the process of learning it, of making it efficient, like getting really good at it, but then I'm then ready to move on. And it's a funny thing. So uh if you can't tell, I mean, our podcast may be ever evolving.
That is true. It's constantly changing. Um, yeah. And we talked about that a little bit last week with bringing in another guest and hopefully continuing that trend and just the evolution of how the, just the evolution of who we are. Yeah. It's just a continual growth, I would say, not necessarily drastic things, but just like we want to continue growing. And that means we will continue changing what we say and what we do and how we function.
Hmm, that's interesting. You know what? Okay, this is way off topic, just warning, but I was just thinking, I kind of think it's natural for humanity to be prone to change
Mm,
or prone to innovation. And I'm not even talking about like evolution. I'm talking even just on the molecular level.
mm,
Like, we reproduce cells at such a rate that every 7 years we don't have any of the old cells from 7 years ago, right?
right.
Like right now, I am like physically, literally, biologically not the same person I was 7 years ago.
Mm,
And then somehow in our minds that also regenerate, we get stuck in the same thing and don't want to move on. Isn't that an interesting thing, when really it is our nature to continually regenerate and move forward?
yeah, I think it's fascinating. And so I've listened to some people who've studied the brain and what happens to a lot of people is you get your brain is an excellent machine of efficiency. And so it's constantly looking for the fastest and quickest way to do something. And so oftentimes the first way you learn something, anything that is similar to that, your brain is just going to use that same pathway and take things that way. And that's why some people can get stuck in a pattern or loop or like this is just what I do, this is what I do.
In
Um
Lotus, we did this.
yeah, because your brain will take anything that looks like that and say, "Okay, I need to be as efficient as I can. This is how we deal with this type of a situation." Um, but it's something like making a different decision one time already starts the process of your brain deconstructing that pathway to construct a new pathway.
Hmm.
It's crazy how quickly that can happen.
It's super interesting. It makes me think about, oh no, my internet connection is unstable. It makes me think about, they say that youthful people have a faster, my internet just crashed.
I wondered.
I
I
have
would
no idea how this is gonna work. I don't know. I don't know how long it was actually recording or not. I guess we'll just see. We'll have this in the
yeah.
middle of our episode and it'll be fine.
That's fine. Yeah, I was talking about something and I realized you had stopped moving. And I was like, "Oh no, is that my internet or hers?"
Who's mine?
Well, anyways, yeah, I think it's fascinating that your brain can begin the process to change your pattern after just one decision that's different than what you had previously made. And that doesn't mean that the new pathway is the one it's always going to choose because the other one is still a more rooted pathway, but it knows like it is so adept to be able to change. But it just
Hmm.
takes you stepping outside of that pattern enough to recognize the pattern for one, and then to be able to make a different decision when you're in the pattern.
That's interesting. So they say that when a person turns 25, the regeneration of cells slows down and it
Mhm.
continues to slow down throughout the rest of your life. But until then, it is like maximum capacity. This is why um, young people tend to catch on to things a lot quicker. They tend to be leading the way in innovation a lot of times. But it makes me think, based on what you're saying, I wonder if we become conscious of making these decisions to do something new
Mhm.
and continue to forge those new pathways, if that I don't know, the quality or the thing that makes you want to continue to innovate will continue to be strong
Right.
as you age. You know what I mean?
I
Like, can we consciously keep that open?
I'm curious if the 25 age number, like, that it stands out to me as like, okay, I finished high school, I finished college, I have my first job, I've probably finished on the job training and I'm getting settled into my routine. Like, is that why that regeneration slows down at that point? Because we've stopped
Hmm.
learning, we've stopped um, doing new things. Like, I've heard some people say the reason you remember your childhood differently than your adult life, or why your childhood seems longer, like why time seems to go faster, is at least partially due to the fact that you're no longer learning new things. And when you're learning new things, your brain, it's like significant. Your brain's like, oh, this is new. We need to remember this. And so it stands out more than just the day to day when you were running unconsciously inside the pattern.
Hmm.
But I'm curious if like the 25 age number that you mentioned, like that would be around that time when you sort of get tend to be established within a pattern. And that's just, I don't know, that's curious to me.
Yeah, a bit. I always heard the 25 age, like there was a point in my life when I was really interested in like picking apart personality types and understanding how people function in that way, which is a helpful
Mm,
thing. But I was like slightly obsessed for a while. Um, and that's what they always said. Like people who are under 25 can take personality tests and kind of be, I don't know, diagnosed, if you will. It's not the right word, but
mhm,
whatever. They can kind of be assigned their personality typing, but it is not solid until someone hits 25, and then it tends to not change after that,
interesting.
which I find to be interesting. But then I learned a few months ago, I have a friend who, I don't know, I was at this presentation and they were talking about it. And biologically, your cell reproduction slows down at 25. And it's like that's when there's a marked difference in things starting to slow down. Like it's still high at a higher rate then, but it starts slowing down. It's not an optimal performance like it is in the youth.
Mm,
And I think that's probably, I think that plays into why the personality then gets set. Like it's not
mhm,
ever evolving, it's not ever changing. That probably plays into why we kind of stop learning things, like
yeah.
having that interest to learn new things. But then you see some people who are constantly learning new things
Mhm,
and stay pretty sharp throughout their lives.
yeah.
Makes you wonder. And you know what? Even in scripture it talks about this. So my very favorite verse in the Bible is Romans 12:2. And it says, do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind
Mhm,
so that you can do the will of the Father, a good, perfect, and pleasing will, right? But it was always the renewing of the mind that like grabbed me
mm,
in that. And I mean, what if we are continually renewing, like
yeah.
spiritually, but also physically, also in our soul? I mean, all of that plays together. So, what if we are forging these new neural pathways to keep our brains young so that we can live forever?
There we go. I mean, we've talked about this in several different ways, but like as traders for one, but also as mystics, I would say that one thing we need to be skilled at is recognizing patterns.
Mm,
Because if you don't recognize the pattern, you're going to stay in an unconscious way of doing things. But once you recognize the pattern, then you're able to change the pattern, um,
mm,
or to know when to do different things. And I think that that's part of, like, that verse starts with, "Don't be conformed to the patterns of this world." Like, I think that it is at least partially, hey, you have an opportunity to just run on autopilot. Don't do that. Don't just run on autopilot every day.
it's a good reminder for me. Fun fact, Josh knows this already, but I'll just share it with the world. Um, so like almost 2 years ago, I left my corporate job. I had a 15-year career in the auto industry, and I left that job. I was good at it. It was kind of second nature for me. Well, they've had some turnaround in uh their employees, and so they asked me to come back and help train for a couple weeks in some of the positions that I had held over the years. And I've been there for a week and a half now. And I told Josh this the other day. It's wild how easy it has been to just step right back into it because it's comfortable. It's like the
Mm,
well-worn path. Like I know the way, but I've been very reminded that that's not the place I'm supposed to be.
yeah,
So I tend to try to stay fairly tuned in to the spirit. If I don't know if that's how you would say, but I just kind of keep an ear to the Father, the Lord, see what he has. And I was really curious going back, like what he would be revealing in all of this. And that's exactly what it's been. It's been like, yes, it's comfortable. And yes, like there's no burned bridges, there's nothing, no bad feelings. It's just that that is no longer the place that you're supposed to be. It's a well-worn path, and I didn't call you to be on that well-worn path.
yeah.
It's interesting.
Mm. Yeah, there's my brain's like making all these little connections between just like the patterns and paths that we're so familiar with. And um but, it's I wonder if part of the renewing of your mind is it's not being in that pattern. It's not having that like consistent thing, but yeah, there's all sorts of things that I'm toying with around that. And I just think that it's significant to pay attention to. Like, how are you living? Are you living on autopilot in the same old pattern that you've done for the past 10 years? Doing the same things, eating the same things, having the same conversations? Um, or are you breaking out of that matrix or that pattern or whatever you want to call it, and and kind of becoming what I would argue a sovereign being, like making choices.
Mm,
Um, we say sometimes, "Oh, I'm making my choices, I'm doing this." But if you're doing the same thing year in and year out, are you really making that choice? You made that choice once or twice.
right.
Um, but yeah, I just think that that's something to pay attention to, of how we live our life, the way we function, the way we make our decisions. Like, types of decisions are you making for yourself?
It's a good word. I just think about, I keep having this imagery, and I feel like this came up the other day in some conversation. Like you, it's like this image of a donkey at a mill, right?
Mm,
It's like um tethered to this machine, and it just walks around in a circle, and eventually it like um forms this rut in the ground from where it's walked. Like these are the steps that I take, and that's where my feet go, and that's where you go. But then you kind of get dug in, and then it's a little harder to get out because it's an old path and you're kind of in it. But I think just kind of what we're talking about at some point, what if the yoke is taken off and you're called out? Like, are you willing to step outside of the well-worn path if you're called there? I'm not saying like everybody is meant to be a trailblazer.
Right.
I'm also not saying that's not true. I just don't know the innate truth in that. I know some people are. I don't know that all people are, but I don't know that they aren't. But if you were to be called out, right? So if you had your ear to the Lord and he said, okay, time to step out. I've taken off the yoke. Time to step out of that path. Would you do it?
Mm.
Or would you need to like rest in the comfortability of what you know?
Yeah. This is no, I like that. And I'm going to add to it and just say like, okay, there's layers to truth, there's layers to the Bible. And so I'm not saying that this means exactly what this verse says, but that it could be a layer of truth or a level of truth in it. Um, but the Bible talks about the road to destruction being wide and the road to heaven or God or whatever being a narrow gate. And as we're talking about patterns and being the donkey, just making the path deep and wide, and um, it just makes me think like okay, as a, like the Bible tells us to be childlike. The Bible tells us to renew our mind. The Bible's telling us to break out of these patterns because it's the pattern, it's the wide road, it's the road well known, the road well traveled that is the rut we get stuck in.
Mm-hmm.
And it can create destruction and hell on earth for you. Like it can be your own hell to just live an unconscious life because it's not how you were created to be. You were created and called to be childlike. Being childlike means you're constantly learning, you're constantly experiencing new things, you're constantly doing unexpected things. I can't tell you how many times I spend time with children and they say the wackiest things, they do the craziest things. They're just like, wonder what would happen if I did this. And it's like, well, that's not how either of those things were meant to work together, but their mind's just like, let's find out what happens. And we get in this pathway of, well, this is how that toy was supposed to be played with. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think that it's curious um, that you can make these connections between these different parts of the Bible. And I'm not saying that is for sure what the Bible is talking about. I'm just saying like this could be a level of truth within that word. And yeah, I think that it's something to pay attention to.
Very much so. So you know what I'm going to do this week? Between now and Monday, I'm going to make a different decision. I'm going to make a new pathway, a new neural pathway. Maybe I'll report back on it. Maybe I won't. We'll see. But you know what? I do want my mind to be renewed, and I do want to still be able to innovate. Like if the Lord says move out of this rut, I will move, and I want to be able to do that and not too comfortable.
Mm,
You know? I
yeah,
think it's quite interesting that what you were just saying, Josh, tied it back to being childlike and how the brain renews then,
yeah.
you know? I find that really interesting. I also really want to say, bye, donkey.
Sounds good. Thank you guys.
Thank you for listening. Join us every Monday and Thursday as we discuss trading on earth as it is in heaven. If you want to connect further, follow us on social media at market.mystics for Instagram and TikTok, and search for Market Mystics on YouTube and Facebook. If you still need more, follow the link on Facebook to book a coaching appointment. Until next time, see ya.